Number 7. Drawbridge, California's only Bay Area ghost town. We're starting with something completely different. A ghost town you can literally see from your Caltrain window, but you'll never be able to visit. Drawbridge sits on a tiny island in the southern San Francisco Bay, and it's slowly sinking into the marsh. Back in 1876, the railroad needed someone to operate 2 drawbridges here, so they built a little town. But here's where it gets interesting. By the 1880s, this became the party spot for San Francisco. Every weekend, up to 1,000 people would take the train down here for hunting, fishing, and dancing until dawn. The town had about 90 wooden buildings split between North and South Drawbridge. But as newer bridges got built and rail routes changed, people started leaving. The last family packed up in 1979, and here's the crazy part. Legend says they released their house cats before leaving, and feral cats supposedly still roam the ruins today. Now, Drawbridge is part of a wildlife refuge, so it's completely off limits. The buildings are literally sinking into the bay, half submerged during high tide. You can spot the weathered timber frames from passing trains, but that's as close as you'll get to California's most mysterious ghost town. Number 6. Eagle Mountain, the largest modern ghost town. From the Bay Area, we're jumping to the desert near Joshua Tree, where something that looks like a zombie apocalypse movie set is actually one of California's most recent ghost towns. Eagle Mountain wasn't some Wild West mining camp. It was built in 1948 by Henry Kaiser as the ultimate company town. We're talking about a fully planned community with 4,000 residents, 2 schools, a hospital, a library, a swimming pool, and even a 9-hole golf course. This place was supposed to be the future. Kaiser built it around a massive iron ore mine to supply his steel mill in Fontana. For over 30 years, this was considered one of the best designed mining towns in California. Kids went to school, families barbecued by the pool, and life was good. Then 1982 happened. Foreign steel competition made the mine unprofitable, and Kaiser shut everything down. Within a year, 4,000 people were gone. The government briefly turned it into a minimum security prison from 1988 to 2003. But when that closed, Eagle Mountain became a true modern ghost. Today, the high school still stands with graffiti covering the walls. The swimming pool is cracked and empty, and hundreds of houses sit with their windows boarded up. The massive concrete foundations of the steel mill look like some ancient ruins. It's privately owned and gated, but urban explorers still find ways in. Oh, and desert bighorn sheep have basically claimed the town as their own. So here's where the story gets really dark. They were making millions of dollars, had thousands of residents, and then one decision by a city 300 miles away basically killed everyone. I'll tell you what happened. But first, can you hit that like button so I will know you're really enjoying this journey into California's forgotten places? Number 5, Bombay Beach, the Salton Sea's lost paradise. Now we're heading to one of the most surreal places in California. The shores of the Salton Sea, where a 1950s resort town turned into an environmental disaster zone that's now somehow become an art destination. Bombay Beach was created by accident in 1929 when the Colorado River flooded and formed the Salton Sea. But by the 1950s and 60s, this became the desert playground of the rich and famous. We're talking yacht clubs, marinas, 4 bars, and even Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby showing up for weekend getaways. Then everything went wrong. Catastrophic flooding in 1976 to 77 from hurricanes destroyed most of the new developments, but the real killer was the rising salinity. The Salton Sea became saltier than the ocean, killing off all the fish. Massive algae blooms created fish kills that literally piled dead fish on the beaches for miles. By the 1980s, almost everyone had fled, leaving behind their furniture, boats, everything. Today, only about 200 people remain in a landscape that looks like the end of the world. Crumbling trailers, rusting boats scattered in the sand, and the occasional house on stilts. But here's the twist. Artists discovered this place and turned it into an unlikely art destination. The annual Bombay Beach Biennale brings installations and murals to the ruins. So now you've got this weird mix of post-apocalyptic decay and contemporary art. It's basically Mad Max meets Art Basel. Number 4, Keeler, buried by dust storms. Moving north to the eastern Sierra, we find a town that was literally choked to death by dust storms, and it's one of the most tragic environmental stories in California history. Keeler started in 1872 as a silver mining hub on the shores of Owens Lake. The town boomed in the 1880s when the railroad arrived, making it the shipping point for the incredibly rich Cerro Gordo silver mines up in the mountains. They had a 300-foot dock, steamboats crossing the lake, and at its peak, this was a pretty bustling place. But then Los Angeles needed water. In the 1920s, LA's aqueduct diverted the entire Owens River, and by 1926, Owens Lake was completely dry. Now here's where it gets brutal. The exposed lake bed created alkaline dust storms that would bury Keeler in toxic dust. Imagine trying to live in a town where the air is constantly filled with caustic alkali that burns your eyes and lungs. Families couldn't take it anymore and started leaving. The mines shut down, the railroad pulled out by 1961, and Keeler became known as the end of the line because trains never went any farther south. Today, only about 70 people remain in what's basically a collection of weathered wooden buildings and 4 massive stone charcoal kilns that still stand in the desert. The kilns are these 100-foot-tall beehive structures that used to make fuel for the mines. They look like something out of a fantasy movie. Number 3, Cerro Gordo, the town that made Los Angeles rich. Speaking of those silver mines, let's head up into the mountains to visit Cerro Gordo, the town that literally financed the growth of Los Angeles. And it's got one of the wildest restoration stories you've ever heard. Perched at 8,000 feet in the Inyo Mountains, Cerro Gordo was discovered in 1865 and became one of the richest silver mining towns in the West. The name means fat hill in Spanish, and boy was it fat. This place produced about $34 million worth of silver and lead, which in today's money would be hundreds of millions. At its peak, 4,700 people lived in this rugged mountain town, complete with saloons, a red light district, and some of the wildest characters in the Old West. The silver from Cerro Gordo was shipped down to Los Angeles and basically funded the city's early growth. Mining finally played out in 1957, and Cerro Gordo became a classic ghost town frozen in time. For decades, it was privately owned and mostly off-limits to tourists. Then in 2018, entrepreneur Brent Underwood bought the entire town. He's been documenting the restoration on YouTube, calling it Ghost Town Living. The American Hotel from 1871 caught fire in 2020, but he's rebuilding it. You can now book tours and even stay overnight in this ghost town. About 22 original buildings still stand on the hillside, and the interiors are incredible. You'll find old bottles, newspapers, and personal items just sitting where people left them over 60 years ago. Number 2, Calico, the fake ghost town. That's more fun than the real ones. Now for something completely different, a ghost town that's actually not a ghost town anymore, but it's probably the most fun one to visit in California. Calico was a legitimate silver mining boomtown in the 1880s, with over 500 mines and 1,200 people. The colorful mineral deposits in the hills gave it the name Calico. But when silver prices crashed in the mid-1890s, the town died pretty quickly. Here's where it gets interesting. In the 1950s, Walter Knott of Knott's Berry Farm fame bought the ruins and completely restored Calico as a tourist attraction. So what you see today is part authentic ghost town, part theme park. And you know what? It works. You've got wooden storefronts, a schoolhouse, mine tours, and even staged gunfights. There's an operating narrow-gauge railroad and a museum packed with artifacts. They host annual ghost town days and Halloween events. Sure, it's touristy, but sometimes touristy is exactly what you want. You can walk around safely, bring the kids, buy some souvenirs, and actually learn about the real mining history. Plus, those mine tours take you into actual silver mines from the 1880s. Number 1, Body, the most authentic ghost town in America. And finally, we're ending with the king of California ghost towns, Body. This place is so legendary that it was named California's official state gold rush ghost town. And once you visit, you'll understand why. High up in the Sierra Nevada at over 8,000 feet, Body exploded into existence in 1875 when a rich gold vein was discovered. By 1879, this was one of the wildest boomtowns in the West with up to 10,000 people and about 2,000 buildings. We're talking 65 saloons, regular shootouts on Main Street, and a Chinatown that was legendary for its lawlessness. The town had everything. A Wells Fargo office, newspapers, schools, churches, and enough brothels to keep the miners entertained. There's even the story of Rosa May, a local prostitute known as an Angel of Mercy, who's buried outside the cemetery fence. But like all mining booms, Body eventually went bust. The last mine closed in 1942, and by 1915 it was already being called a ghost town. Here's what makes Body special. It became a state park dedicated to arrested decay. That means they preserved the buildings exactly as they were when people left. You can peer through windows and see bottles still sitting on bar counters, children's toys in schoolrooms, and newspapers from the 1930s still on desks. About 110 original buildings remain, and walking through Body feels like stepping back in time. The red brick mortuary, the old church, the schoolhouse, they're all there, weathered by over a century of Sierra winters, but still standing. Body gets about 200,000 visitors a year, but it never feels crowded because of how remote it is. You drive 13 miles off Highway 395, and the last 3 miles are on a dirt road. So there you have it. 7 forgotten ghost towns that tell the incredible story of California's boom and bust history, from railroad towns sinking into the bay to modern company towns abandoned overnight. These places remind us that nothing lasts forever, but sometimes the stories they leave behind are even more fascinating than when they were alive. If you're planning to visit any of these places, do your research first. Some are state parks, some are private property, and some are literally sinking into marshes. But whether you visit them in person or just from your screen, these ghost towns are proof that California's history is way more interesting than just gold rushes and Hollywood dreams. But we're just getting started exploring California's forgotten places. I've got another video ready for you that dives into some absolutely wild abandoned locations that'll blow your mind. Check out this next video on your screen. I will see you there.